I'll call the Public Works Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Cindy,
Here.
Seth,
Here.
Todd,
Here.
Andrew,
Here.
Crystal.
Here. First period for public comment. No one is here. Is anyone online who would like to speak?
Looks like you're good, Cindy.
Okey doke. Approval of committee minutes from September 2nd, 2025.
Todd, I'll approve the minutes.
And I'll second. This is Crystal.
Motion by Todd, very good. Second by Crystal to approve the minutes. Any discussion, questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Discussion and possible action regarding the 2026 Public Works budget draft. This sounds like a big subject. Sarah.
Okay, let me just get my screen shared. All right, so the budget committee was able to look at budget that was put forward. Sorry, I'm just trying to organize my screen and that screen. And let's see if we can get you a bit better view here. For the most part, I think the proposal was accepted with a few changes. And I guess maybe just going line by line be the most appropriate way to go through it. I guess this is a major thing which is our intergovernmental revenue for our highway aid. Hopefully soon we'll know what we're at. So I guess just overall, when we look at this budget, we do know that maybe more than most, this is still interim, right? Because we don't know what we're going to see when we get the number back. I'm expecting it to go up, but there's so much that goes into this number. We can't really guarantee anything until we see it. Let's see. Do you want to say anything about solid waste at all, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, that is a pretty set item. Essentially, what we do every year is we take into account the new rates that we've agreed to per contract with GFL. We calculate that against the household size, and then we ensure that the number of households, I should say, and then we ensure that the revenue on the flip side matches up with it so that it's a net zero change. So it is a $29,000 increase to the expenses, but it's an equal, if not slightly more, increase to the revenue that we collect from the residents. And so Cheryl and I will typically check to see what the household count is in November, if we remember, right, Cheryl? And then we'll send it to GF. Yeah, good, because I don't. And so then we'll send that to GFL and they'll say, okay, then this is what you can expect in terms of monthly billing. And then Cheryl and I basically reverse engineer that to make sure I have her double check the rates for me that go out to the residents to ensure everything goes matchy. So again, it's an increase. That one's actually the increase in the surcharge, right? But you'll also see down below that there's a slightly smaller by maybe $20 increase to the expenses as well.
Okay, let's see. Continuing through, so I guess my wages is here. So wages across the board are in many different categories. So it's always really hard to look at it specifically because it's like I have 5 wage categories, but making sure that everything comes back and is paid for with the current rate. So we did put forward, I put forward based on looking at how things went, an increase, and it was really hard to decide how to do it. But when I looked at some comparables that particularly Vernon County, one of the things that became really obvious was that we are paid lower than the county across the board, but that the wages that were on the lower end were closer to the county's wages on the lower end. And then the wages on the higher end were like further apart. So like dollar for dollar, it was different. So like Greg, Cheryl, wage, like the superintendent kind of positions, those positions had a bigger gap compared to their counterparts at the county. Mine as well, even bigger gap, dollar for dollar. And so when I was trying to figure out like how to put wage increase in, because that was talked about a lot, like that's what we'd like to see, more compensation across the board for staff at the city. I put a percentage increase in as opposed to like a dollar increase. It just seemed that that made more sense based on what I could see out there. So essentially like our rate structure is more flat than what we saw in the county. And the reason the county, I use that as a good reference point, is they had like people who do the wage categorization ranges, like professionals come in and look at it. And so I think it's like a good way to look at it because obviously somebody's taken a lot of time to figure out where that should be. And I would say I did get that information from the county, and it has not just the street department, like type highway department wages, that's like everybody at the organization. So you know, that's public knowledge if you want to look at that.
How much did the health insurance go up? I haven't heard the rate.
So we don't know yet. The health insurance numbers don't ever show up until the maybe first week in October or last week in September. So we always sort of just try to feel out our brokers who give us an estimate. But we're anticipating right now the budget includes a 9.9% increase, call it 10% increase to health insurance rates.
I heard them say at the league conference it was 12%. So
Yeah, I mean, courts is kind of its own thing, and
Yeah.
again, we'll see where it lands, but we should. I think Lori noted to me that they should have them by the October 1 or September 30th.
Yeah, he was talking like the end of this month, so.
Yeah, so we should have them soon. But yeah, what's in there right now is a 10% increase. And again, just to reiterate, like there's a large drop in health insurance across all departments this year because last year when we budgeted for health insurance, we budgeted for that stipend, that opt-out agreement stipend, to be recorded as a health insurance item, but it's not a health insurance item. It's a wage compensation. So you'll see across the board, you'll see health insurance across the city is going down, especially areas where the opt-out agreement was popular. But conversely, you'll see that wages are really inflated because the stipend got moved out of health insurance into their wages. So just a reminder as you
thank
look
you.
at this.
I was wondering about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the original proposal that I put forward, I didn't really have a good comprehension of, like, it was so individual by department. So that I was just trying to figure out like what a good number would be, and I didn't want to overestimate, I didn't want to underestimate, you know, like I was trying to figure out, but until I knew or had like the committee, the budget committee look across the board at what was being presented at the city, it was hard to know. So the first go around, I put 10% in. They came back with 7.5%, which, you know, that's there, the budget committee. But I will say they did come back at 7.5% for everybody but me. And I was only at a cost of living increase. So I do want them to look at that again. I feel like for a variety of reasons, that was not necessarily the right aim. I've worked for the city for a very long time, and I've never had a merit increase or any other increase besides cost of living, except for when I became the public works director as well. As well as just looking at like comparables, jobs that are not even as hard as mine at the county, like they have an engineering job / deputy highway commissioner position that paid more than I get. So I think it's just worth looking, and I'm happy to talk to folks about that, but I felt like that I did truly look at it across the board for a reason. And in the end, we ended up getting some of the funding that was in here originally back. So I think it's fundable. So we can talk about that too. Let's see. So most of the stuff, there wasn't a lot of changes from last year with my budget in general, besides wages. There were a few categories that I could take down. So one of them, like for example, here would be engineering or the GIS. We just, there was lots of changes over time with how we were paying for it. And now we kind of settled into something pretty steady. And so I was able to reduce that a little bit.
Maybe you could read the numbers just because Seth
Oh,
and
sure.
AJ can't see it.
Okay, so that would be the total budget previously was 1,900 and we reduced it, or I reduced it by $400. So not a lot, but that was just what the expenses were trending at. Garage other expense, basically, anything that would fit in that category. I can give you some specifics here. Let's see. Like our, it would be Mark's, coveralls and his towels and things like that, cleaning, Permar, which is our, security, tool allowance, and then just in the other category. And then we just spent more in that category last year. And so increase that one by $1,000. So it was 15,656 and put in 16,666. Gasoline and oil, I did drop significantly. I'm not sure how to predict gas prices, but that's not why I reduced it. The reason that I reduced it was that we moved to having a temporary diesel fuel pump at the shop, and that saved us a significant amount of money. And so just projecting with a cushion where we were at last year, and because we've had it for a year and a half, Chad Hoyam brought that in. It did save us money. And so again, one of the directives was to look at increases for staff, but then to find where that might come from. Let's see.
I don't know if you said the numbers or not. 45 down to 30,000.
Yeah, 45,000 down to 35,000. So a $15,000 cut. So it's a significant cut. So then the rest of those categories for machinery and equipment are like all within the wages, and I'm not going to go any further into the wages because it's all based on that original conversation. Machinery and equipment. I've been cutting this category for a while now because we've been categorizing things differently. And we've also are not saving money for capital purchases in there anymore. So like, if we needed a new, so there is some, so we do have like a trade-in that we replace for tractors, but this would be like if we were looking for something to like replace another piece of equipment, we wouldn't take it out of this category. So over the last number of years, we've been able to not spend as much in that category. The capital equipment, we don't have a capital equipment purchase budgeted in here, but that's because we have a capital improvement plan that would dictate what goes in there. Street maintenance, other, this category, I did ask for more funding in it. So it was 14,900 up to 17,600. Oops, where am I here? Street maintenance, other. Sorry, I have lots of different things that make up what I have here. Okay, so essentially it was the IT services that we never really had in budget before. So allowing for that, and then bumping it up just in general because it was pretty tight historically. The street maintenance and painting and signs, I also increased this one. It was 20,000 up to 24,000. We've been spending a lot of money on signs lately and also trying to plan for the fact that we've got more paint out there. We've been switching to epoxy, sort of just across the board. This category has been hit harder So I did ask for more because again, we were trending that way. Another biggie is salt. So I've got current budget last year was 51,500. If you remember, I made a point last year of saying we're going to ask for more next year because we knew that we had enough salt to get us through the year. So we had purchased it, but we knew we could save last year, but I had made a note of that we were going to need it back. So not only did I take that back, I also added more. So that increased 14,500. Part of it is just the cycle that we find ourselves in because we have to purchase salt and we order it basically a year ahead of time, 8 months ish. And then we have to commit ourselves for the full year and we commit ourselves for what we're purchasing in the future, but we also commit ourselves for what we're purchasing without knowing what the price is. Yeah.
Crazy.
Right? So it's tricky and I'm glad I asked for more because the bid for this year was just like $99 a ton. I think when I started here, it was $45 a ton. And that was 15 years ago. So in a short period of time, the cost has doubled. Sometimes we can find savings here, depending on like when our need is. But again, not something, we're in a point where we need to ask for more, not less for this year, and we'll see what happens next year. I did reduce the curb and gutter other replacement. This was a little bit of an odd category. We've spent money in it and not spent money in it. And it kind of overlaps with stormwater maintenance because like if we're doing new catch basins, so it's kind of like it gets used a lot sometimes, not used a lot sometimes, but it can be put in different categories. So I felt like we could basically half it. It was 4,750 before, and now we're asking for 2,500. Let's see, sidewalk, I dropped down $500. Sidewalk other expense. So there was a while there we were catching up with the sidewalk hazards that we were doing. And so the folks had the time to do theirs, then the cutting and then the replacements. And then there was a cycle where we were catching up with like tree root damage and things like that. And so for a while there, we were needing this additional amount. As you can see, we dropped it a lot compared to what we were using originally. Now, I think that's a conversation to be had in the future about how to manage sidewalk hazards because we are going to get hit again. So like we did this cycle and we took care of a lot of them. But there's an expectation that the city continues to maintain sidewalks. For example, like when people trip and have an insurance claim, the first thing they ask me is, did you know about it? And then if you knew about it, what's your plan for maintenance? Or even what's your maintenance plan for sidewalks, period, if you didn't know about it, because like, are you watching and inspecting these things? And so, we had approached it when we did it with assessments, but I know that people are looking at that not being the way they want to do it. There is some options that were put forward in the bike and pedestrian plan. There's other things that we've looked at. I think it's just about making time to like make a real plan about it. I don't think it's an emergency, but I would say that like soon, the next year or two, we should probably make a plan. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to happen in 2 years, but we should start thinking about getting serious about that again. Nate obviously touched on the recycling being a kind of in and out category. I didn't change the lot with anything in the compost and brush other expense category. I did reduce the weed control just because we haven't been spending the money from 1,600 to 1,000. And I guess that basically sums it up. So when I did the math for the increase before, my aim was to hit half of the expense of that because I figure, there's increased revenue compared to last year, just across the board. I think we hit a pretty good spot. You know, we're meeting our budget balance, I guess. You know, we're asking for more than we did last year, but I think it's a reasonable amount. And I will say one thing I didn't talk about is that the street maintenance material, I missed that. So there's been some fluctuations here, and there was cuts sort of. So there was a couple weird things that were happening last year because we had the non-lapsing funds that we were counting on using. So that came through. So it looks like I'm putting $1,000 extra or $11,000 extra back in, but it actually just accounts for the fact that the non-lapsing funds was used last year. So that's a little bit different. I'm actually asking for more cold mix. And there was a reduction of 30,000. And I know that felt really weird because I had been asking for money for street projects, but the reason that I took the 30,000 out was because I had specifically asked for 30,000 for Main Street because we were doing the work on Main Street and we had people that were doing concrete work right there already. And I knew this was the best time to ask them to do work. So for the last 3 years, we've been spending 30,000 extra on top of it. Let's say 2 years. I feel like it was 3 years, but I don't know what the 23 is up here, so I may misspeak, but it was there for 2 years. We don't have a construction project on Main Street in 2026, which is why I took it out. So I know it felt like we were going backwards when we were looking at it, but there was a reason that I did specifically look at that differently. And so the budget committee did add 10,000 back in there, which we can certainly talk about, but again, I think it felt like it was more of a cut, but it was more just the fact that we were allocating money a certain way. Because we still have 45,000 for seal coating and 50,000 for resurfacing. And I will say the seal coat budget's pretty flexible. Like I can find projects that are smaller and bigger and then kind of like mismatch them together so that I come up with the right amount of money. A resurfacing project, and the cost of asphalt continues to fluctuate and go up generally. So it is a little bit hard to budget for, but it's usually like a block at a time. A block costs so much, like 40,000 and 45,000, that like I either do 1 block or 2 blocks. Sometimes I can find a long block, but that one's a little bit harder to play with. So I like to try to keep that one like in that $50,000 range, which is why I put forward the way I did.
Sarah, can you go back to that main sheet down towards the bottom? I'd just like to say a couple of things as a member of the budget team, because I think what's important here is, you know, Sarah submitted these things originally. The budget team went through and made alterations, and now we're coming back to the Public Works Committee to say, hey, how do we do? And so what I'll say overall from a budget team is, number one, Sarah did a really tremendous job on her budget. Understanding the assignment was like, we want to focus on wages, but we have to look internally to see where we can find savings in order to make those things happen. And she did a really wonderful job with it. The other thing was the budget team's task then is when we get different wage increases from different departments, we have to then look at them not only in terms of the external comparisons that the department heads submit, but also the internal comparisons versus positions within the city. And so that's a lot of the reason that you'll see not only in this department, but other departments, how we sort of landed where we landed is say, okay, well, this person's at this person and this person over here is a similar position or a higher supervisory position. And so therefore it would make more sense for them to be a little higher. And so we just try to make sure that when we look at all wages across the city, we feel like everything stacks up appropriately from position to position. So that's a lot of the reason why. And then of course, the other consideration is just how much money is available. At this point, the time of submitting this back to Sarah, we are $1,400 under levy limits, which means we are right up against it. Every year we try to keep a cushion. As of this budget right here, we have no cushion left. There are still some levers that we might be able to pull in the future, but all the easy levers have been pulled. Anything we do from here is going to be more challenging and complex. And so that was part of the reality too. And so just the long and short of it about how we ended where it was. And part of what we did is because Sarah did a really good job on saying like, well, we can cut this and cut this if we can make wages happen. Well, the budget team was like, well, from our position, our perspective, those types of wage increases we're not quite able to do. But instead, here is some of your cuts back. Please continue to invest in maintenance and infrastructure projects, because the budget team has also heard that loud and clear over the past, I mean, since I've been here 3 or 4 years, that we are not keeping up, right? And that if we can maintain roads before they really start falling apart, then we really prolong their lives and can put off major road reconstruction projects. So that's just, again, FYI, a little bit of the mentality that the budget team approached Sarah's budget. And again, there's not a ton of changes versus what was submitted initially, but those are some of the considerations that made, and what I'll say is like tweaking to the budget. But again, Sarah submitted some information specifically regarding her wage, and where we're at right now is we're going to wait for the rest of the committees to meet, take all the feedback from the committees, and then hopefully at that point, other numbers like health insurance and others will come in that will really form out, hey, how much money are we really working with here? And then the budget team can sort of take one more crack at it before submitting a budget prior to I think it's usually the first day in October. I forgot, I don't have the process in front of me, but that's kind of where we're at right now. So I know we're short on time. She's a few other agenda items. I don't mean to cut Sarah off, but we'd really at this point be looking for any feedback from the committee so that the budget team can absorb that.
Well, you're on the budget team. Did you want anything, Crystal?
Yeah.
Did you want to add anything or?
No, I said this was really, really tight and it was probably, oh, thank you. It was one of the harder ones we've had to do because we know people need more and want more, but there wasn't more.
Okay,
So we did the best we could.
well, thank you. AJ, Seth?
Appreciate the work on it.
Todd? Anything?
Yeah, Nate, you answered the questions that I had on just kind of what was the thought process with like the counters coming back from Sarah's proposal of 10 to 7 or 7.5 and 3. So appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, and I was going to ask about Sarah's wages. You said you thought there were some budget cuts in here that could allow for you to have some increase, right?
Yeah, well, the money that was given back from where we had it needs to
Okay,
go
well-
somewhere, and we just,
well, it
I think
seems-
it was recommended that it would go into the street maintenance.
Oh, okay. Well, I just like the idea that the budget team will consider it because you work very hard and you do a lot, and I'd certainly like to see you compensated. Okay, so you need a motion for us or anything?
At this point, I don't think we're looking for any formal motion unless there's something you folks feel really. I don't think we need a formal motion at this point unless there's something you folks feel really strongly about. I think just the feedback in general, the fact that as we sort of went through that and Sarah went through it again, there was no red flags that seemed to go off in anybody's minds. Nobody's raising their hand and said, wait. I think that's enough to let the budget team know, like, we're generally on the right track and we just need to kind of finish some of the conversations in a few key places. But
Okay.
Now's the time to tell us if we're way off base here. Okay.
I don't have any comments, so Seth, AJ?
I don't either. I
Okay.
think we're good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for all your hard work, Sarah, and budget team. Discussion and approval to apply for DOT signal grant, which we got that paperwork.
Oh, darn. Okay. Nate, can you give me a second to pull that up? For whatever reason, that one's spaced.
Were you asking me to start talking about?
No, it was more just not having my whole thing up on
Oh,
the screen
sure.
while I look
Yeah.
for it.
Seconds
because-
granted.
For whatever reason, I have no idea why did not pull that one up. I thought I was so well prepared. Okay.
You had the
so-
budget very organized.
yeah. Well, there's more other agenda items, but okay, I am ready, Nate.
Go ahead. It's all yours. You just gotta share.
Okay, so in all of the work that we've been doing with the DOT, I got to spend a lot of time with the signal guy from the DOT, and he said, you know, we were talking about the Decker intersection, the actual cabinet. The cabinet was installed in 1999, and as you can imagine, by electronic standards, that's beyond old. They recommend changing it at 20 years at minimum, and we're at 26. So in talking to him about it, he's like, you know, you should really apply for this signals grant. And so, you know me, like grant, woohoo, let's do it. And so that's how I got into this. Although I will say I cannot take credit for this at all because Colin, I was realizing that I was kind of behind the gun getting this in, and he's like, I'll do it for you. And I'm like,
Nice.
okay, because I know that he knows what it is and he could probably put it together in an hour or two. And for me, I'd have to research like how much each
Mhm.
thing costs and what needs to be there, which was awesome. So I was like, please and thank you. So he put this together for us. Essentially, what it does is it replaces the full cabinet out there at Decker. And then if you if you walk enough, you will realize that only one of those crosswalk walk buttons or
Mhm.
displays has a countdown. All the rest of them are just flashing, but one has the countdown, and it's actually they're all supposed to have a countdown. So we put that in there, and that's already happened. We already changed that out at the South Street intersection, and obviously we got a new cabinet with all these upgrades, but the other thing is, ADA compliant buttons. So the new style that are ADA compliant not only make a noise when you touch it, because we actually have one out there that doesn't make an audio noise. So you keep touching it thinking that it's not, but it's actually working. It just doesn't sound like it is. As well as the new ones say, like have an audio cue, walk, or wait. So anyway, he put this all together, and that would also include the ADA buttons at the South Street, because on South Street, we reused existing components for a lot of it.
So if we got the grant, it would cost us 6,500, is that? what it is?
No, so the total grant application is
Municipal
65,000 and it's a 90-10 split. So it would be 6,500 for the city.
Yeah.
I was trying to scroll down because he's got this in 2028 because, you know, that's the quick turnaround that the DOT does. But hey, I'm not going to complain about getting money at the scale of a grant. So in 2028, we either would need to budget it. I would say that amount under the current format that I have, I would have money for that under the operating budget, but we can decide what we want to do with it if we get it. I would say typically when the DNR or the DOT applies for their own grants, they're pretty successful. So hopefully that works.
Anybody want to make a motion or any questions for Sarah? Sounds like a good deal to me.
This is Crystal, and I'd move approval to apply for the Department of Transportation signal grant, and I believe the amount was 65,000.
Todd will second it.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? We don't do a roll call for this. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, there's nobody left, so motion carries. Review and approval of pay request number 1, Center Avenue project.
Okay. Now, why do I not have any Adobe files open? What is this day coming to? Hold on one moment. I was having some troubles with Adobe today because I brought up our water system map and it like crashed Adobe. It did not like how big it was. It would had a a permanent clock spinny thing going on even when I wasn't even on that page. Okay, here we go. So this pay request from Badger is a lot of it is just stored materials, which means They bought pipe essentially ahead of the game and trying to secure pricing, and they've stored it on site. And, but they have to pay for it. So that's the large majority of what you see here is stored materials. And that's why it says change order, because they always call it, they put it under change order, even though it's stored materials. So if you remember, as they installed the product, they take the cost off, so it'll slowly disappear. But the total is $280,728.69 for the stored materials. And then the rest was, some installation of some water main, well, mobilization, some, removing of asphalt and concrete. And then I believe there was a little bit of water main in here somewhere. Or am I making that up? Nope, there it is. 1,500 for the water main. And that was it. So essentially, this was very water heavy in terms of a pay request, which means the entity that's paying for all of the water costs is the DNR. So the DNR is paying, we are paying, they are funding it through a loan. So in order to get that money, we want to submit a reimbursement request. And that's part of why you're seeing this now, is that if we can get this in 3 weeks before our closing, which is on the 22nd, then we can include it in the first disbursement. It's actually the second disbursement, but they give it to us all in one, which means we can pay Badger by the end of October for the stored materials. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, what we're looking at is a current payment due of $351,372.41.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Anyone want to make a motion?
This is Crystal, and I would move that we approve the Center Avenue back up the bus. That we approve pay request number 1 for the Center Avenue project in the amount of $351,372.41.
Todd will
Is
second it.
AJ, I'll second.
Okay, motion by Crystal, second by AJ. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Seth,
Aye.
Todd,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
and Cindy.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Review and approval of Center Avenue multi-use path painting plan.
Okay, so if you remember, we have a multi-use path on the west side, the west side of Center Avenue, and it crosses some driveways and crosses some streets. And so in the original plan, we had the path being asphalt when we were on the path, but when it crossed a driveway, we put concrete, and then the same sort of thing. And that's how we did Rock Avenue. I actually didn't love that, like how it turned out, because you get such a nice roll on the asphalt without all the joints, but it was just for a strength issue. Since then, we did the bike and pedestrian plan, and that was one of the recommendations, was that like that path needed to be more cohesive, but people liked the idea of the path being off the road. And so we have a couple things to talk about that all kind of come down to the same thing. In the original plan, when the path crossed the driveways, it was concrete. That was a different color than if there was like asphalt beside it. Like in this scenario, like at Vestbox or Nelson Agri Center, they have asphalt on the other side of the road. And so when we got through those areas with concrete, you could tell the difference between their property and the path. In the bike and pedestrian plan, Sean recommended that those shouldn't have those gaps. He said you should just pave the path all the way through. The approaches, like the angled part of the driveway, should be concrete. And then you can delineate, if needed, the path with green paint. And that's what they do all over the place. They have green paint. So in our current plan, it has concrete and then green paint crossing the streets. So where the path would go. That's what's currently in the plan. Now we plan as in the construction bid. that part of why we ended up with that was we just didn't have a lot of time to work through this before we got there. And then looking at the fact that, hey, maybe we should be putting asphalt in, made us take a step back and look at the whole thing. And so if we put asphalt through the paths or through the driveways, not only do we keep it cohesive, but we actually save money because asphalt is cheaper than concrete. So that I think is kind of a win. And for the most part, I think it's a win. The flip side is that, so for driveways where there's concrete on one side, they'll have concrete on both sides in the future. And it'll be really clear where the path is, right? There'll be an asphalt and concrete on either side. But then there are those sections like at Vestbox where the whole area that they have adjacent to the path is asphalt. So it's like, well, what are we going to do in those situations to help protect and delineate the path? Because it might be confusing to all drivers and people who are on the path where the path is when you've got like a seam of asphalt. Especially next to Nelson's, like where they have their parking area, because they're resurfacing it. So it's literally going to be resurfaced at the same time. It'll be a lot harder for people to be like, oh, that's old asphalt and this is new. Like, is this going to look the same? So then we started really talking about how the painting was going to look. And so we came up with the idea that we could paint a line along the edge to help delineate and paint it in green. And one of the pictures that I have here, let's see, has like that kind of idea, right? So this is the asphalt path, and it wouldn't be the whole path. It would just be like where it was confusing for people. So that for the 2 blocks, so in all, to switch to asphalt and paint certain areas, it's cheaper than what we currently have. For those 2 blocks, it means an increase of in those blocks compared to the concrete of $800. So it's really not a lot. If we do it the whole thing in asphalt and crossings, we're going to save a significant amount of money, much more than that $800. So I think it's an overall win. So I think if everybody feels pretty good about that line being
How wide is the line? Pardon me. So it says Seth and AJ can't see it.
Okay.
It's
Sorry. Yeah. So essentially it's like there's like a universal color for bike paths. It's green. Pretty much if you look online and just have bike paths paint, you'll see the same green. So it's kind of like a grass green actually.
But the line is what, 6 inches wide or something?
It'll be 6 inches. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so essentially we would paint that along the edge where it might be confusing.
Yeah.
Vestbox and Nelson's, whether the path is there or not.
That's a good idea.
And then we started talking about what we have for the roads, because currently the way they put it in, they have the roads as like a solid path. Oh, this was just an idea. Sorry. Hold on, I need to go through where I have those other images. I've lost everything today. I had other images of what a solid path looks like. So this is like your standard bike path, has that green and it's solid. And this is what they had originally put for the crossings. So that would be like across Decker, across, well, all the side streets, Court, Terhune, and Jefferson. But I started not thinking that might be the best way to do it, because if you look, like this is a good example. A solid section is actually supposed to be your protected path. So when you paint it through an intersection, you're actually giving the indication to the bike that they don't really have a lot to worry about. And you can see in this why this one's so good, that they actually have changed the way they do it when they get in the intersection, because they're showing, and they do this pretty universally, they're showing you are getting into an area where a automobile might cross your path. So I actually think that instead of having this solid, that we should be going with the blocks. And it could be something like this. Could be just the square blocks, would certainly be easier for us later to deal with. But I think all in all, the blocks would be a smarter way to do it. And it also is half the amount of paint. So there's a lot there, but I guess the gist of it is what we would like to see is instead of having concrete through driveways on the path would just continuously be asphalt. Anytime it got confusing about whether the path was where it was and it was hard to delineate from a large area of asphalt, like at Best Box, we'll paint a green 6-inch line to just show where that line goes. And then in the intersections, instead of having a solid path through, we would do what they've got here. And in a lot of the other examples where they have the dotted line, let's see, I can show you some more. Right.
So the green just ends where there's a crosswalk or a driveway or something.
Correct. So you won't
Okay.
have green
Okay.
on most of the path. It
Okay,
will
got
just
it.
be in crossing at roads. So when the path crosses a road, and then it would be more like this blocked pattern versus a solid area. Something like this kind of idea.
Green where the path
So-
crosses the road?
Say that again?
You said it's green where the path crosses the road?
Right. So like once you get up, like so across Decker or across Court, Jefferson, Terhune, like as you go down in the approach, the curb cut for the sidewalk, you're gonna end up having the green strip go through. It'll be like a crosswalk,
okay.
essentially. A
Just-
crosswalk that indicates that bikes can go as well as pedestrians. Because
Okay.
technically, your bike shouldn't be in a crosswalk, right? Like as driven in through.
Okay,
So this is the proposal. If you like it, this is what we'll do. It will be a net decrease in cost. So I think everyone saves there. But again, this is what it would look like.
okay. Sorry, AJ and Seth, you'll have to see it clear when you
I
get
had
here.
One question, and it's the longevity of it. I
Mhm.
know that they always say concrete lasts longer than the pavement. Is that going to be a problem in the future as far as patching goes and stuff or not?
Yeah, it's a trick with,
Okay.
I mean, concrete generally will last longer. Asphalt's easier to fix.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like
Okay.
depending. Sorry, my
That's all
kid
right.
keeps trying to call me. And he must have got out early. So I'm just gonna quickly say here.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Sarah about this? Or any comments? Does it sound okay? I'm sure a lot of research.
I like the block idea.
Okay. So we need a motion.
This is Crystal, and I would move approval of oh geez, I'm on the wrong one again. Of the Center Avenue multi-use path painting plan with the green paint as discussed.
This
This is
is,
AJ, I'll second.
Okay, motion by Crystal, second by AJ. Do you need anything? We didn't talk about money, so, okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Nays, no. Motion carries. Approval for contract extension for landfill investigation, TRC.
That would be the other thing that was a PDF.
Hmm.
One moment, please. Okay, so landfill, one of my, what keeps me busy most, not most, but a lot these days. This was one of those unplanned things to keep my time full. And some days it keeps my time very full. So I guess the good part about that is that you didn't have to pay TRC to come and do sampling as frequently as we've done it, because that would have been a astronomical amount.
Because, well, just to clarify, Sarah, because I think that's a good point, is Sarah's been taking on a lot of the sampling now, and I think that's specifically referring to of what's consuming a lot of your time is taking on the work that we could have contracted out with, but we're trying to save money by asking Sarah to do it.
You're welcome. That's what I try to do for you guys. That's why you got an engineer, right?
Sarah is a trooper.
Okay, so where we're at with the whole landfill thing is that we submitted initially the gas was detected. The DNR said you need to submit a plan about what you're going to do about it. We did phase 1 and phase 2 construction to try to do the interceptor. If you remember, we did part of phase 1, most of phase 1. We got to a point where we felt like didn't need to go any further. It wasn't going to gain us anything. And so we ended up stopping where we were. The DNR was happy with that. We said, we're going to continue to do sampling, and we've been doing as much sampling as we possibly can until they told us to do something else, which is now. They have now come back to us and said, okay, what's your plan now? Because you're submitting information that did say that there was gas that was offsite. And so what we have been doing over the last little bit is trying to understand what exactly is happening at the landfill. And there clearly is, the landfill has a life of its own, is to be the short of it, in the sense that it fluctuates significantly in ways that are not standard for most landfills, meaning sometimes we have positive pressure and gas is coming out. Sometimes we have negative pressure and we're not getting any gas out. And we've been trying to figure out what has been causing that. We've had a couple leads and we're starting to feel like we're getting somewhere with it, but we've gone down a few paths and we're trying to figure out, we have to verify what we're finding. So there's this whole situation going on where the landfill is wildly inconsistent. So that's happening in the background. And then on top of it, we've been working with trying to figure out, so the current setup is a passive landfill system, meaning we're just letting gas move towards vents, and the vents are going to the atmosphere. The next step in the DNR's mind and sort of the industry is that instead of just letting it be passive, you do active gas remediation. So it means you put like a blower and suck gas out of the landfill. If there's a significant amount, you got to flare it off, that kind of thing. And so trying to figure out like how effective it is. Mike's most concern is that we got this giant blower system out there and then it's great for 6 months. We get all this gas and then nothing, because it's not an active landfill. We're not adding to it. There could be a lot of storage happening as opposed to production. And so what might seem to work really well for a short period of time and is a large investment may not really end up being a good long-term investment. And so we've been working with trying to figure out like how much suction is needed and like, can we sort of do some experiments to see how well it works. And so that's what we've been doing for the last little bit. The trick is that we've got this system that seems to be doing its own thing, sometimes being positive, sometimes being negative, and then us going in and trying to do this other thing, and then trying to make sure we can differentiate what our successes were and versus whatnot. So that's why our time has been spent monitoring. And so the DNR needs us to come back to them again and say, okay, we need another plan submittal, which is what we did originally, about what is going to happen next. And so that's why we have this in front of us, is because Mike has been I've been checking in with him, but hasn't been put a lot of work in up to now, but now he's got to put a lot of work in again. And one of the main parts of this is that we want him to come on site and spend a day here. Because the benefit of me doing all this is that we haven't had these guys to travel and come and spend, $200 an hour to go do this for us. But the bad part about it is that he hasn't been on site. So like when I'm explaining to him how we set things up, I can send him pictures, but he's not here. So he really wants to come out. So that's what this entails, is those two things. So here's where we are up to date. So adding this change order obviously increases the cost of how much we spent so far. We have up to now, it was been $77,290. And most of that was the construction work. There was the report that happened on the front end and them coming out and monitoring, but the other part was them designing, doing the construction drawings and being out on site during construction. So this one is for that 22,800. It would mean that just as a cumulative, thank you. We are up to 100,090 with them.
So you need a motion to approve 22,800.
Correct.
Okay, change order.
I will say
This
that,
all still,
sorry,
does this all still fall under the original amount, or is this adding to our total now?
Adding.
this is continuing to add. So this is an additional from what we,
What, just to
Sorry.
clarify, AJ, when we had originally talked about the full total project budget, we had talked around somewhere in the range of what, 700,000, Sarah? AJ, was that kind of your question? Like, where are we at on the total project budget or?
Yeah,
right, okay. I did not pull up the pay request from before, but it was in the $200,000 range. So we probably spent about $300,000 of that seven.
Okay.
And I believe that 750 was specifically for the cost of doing the full passive gas system.
Okay.
Sarah, one more question. Have we discovered or detected enough to confirm that what they detected at the church or the was for sure coming from the landfill?
So we have detected gas up to the property line. We do not have probes on their property. In talking to the gas company, they had been out there for another issue. They have not found any gas since we've done the work. And but there was also, well, there was always some reading there, a little bit on the outside of the building. And then in the inside, we've been monitoring and there hasn't been any measurement of it since that original. So there certainly could be like debris that's off-site, because I definitely, nothing was super clean, as in this was like an area people were just dumping, and then it kind of got formalized into like a true dump site as a dump, and then they kind of cleaned it up and covered it, but like how well did they delineate exactly where the garbage ended versus where people were just throwing it? So I mean, that is certainly something to think about. However, when we're at our property line, we're not always getting less than the limit.
Okay, that helps to hear. I have concerns that we are still chasing a ghost detection that we may not discover putting this money towards it.
Well, I think it's good to keep in mind that we have 3 probes on the east side of the landfill, which is adjacent or near the church. But we also have 4 probes on the north side of the landfill, which would be adjacent to that property we own at the Hanson Farm. And those also have measurements of methane.
Okay.
So we need to do something.
So we can't have gas go off property onto someone else's property from our landfill.
Right. Okay, so we need an approval, a motion to approve the contract extension.
Correct.
This is Crystal, and I would move for approval of the contract extension for the landfill investigation with TRC in the amount of 22,800.
Todd will second it.
Motion by Crystal, second by Todd. Roll call, please.
Todd,
Aye.
Andrew,
aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
and Seth.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Do we want to just skip
We
to
can
let,
just wrap it up.
Yeah,
It's got 2
okay.
minutes, I think.
yeah, we're down to 59 I've got. I don't know if Cheryl had anything she needed to say.
you next time.
Catch us next time. Okay, second period for public comment. I don't see anybody here, I don't think, that wants to comment on this. Online, anyone want to comment? You got about 30 seconds. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Todd will make a motion to adjourn.
This is Crystal.
AJ, second.
Motion by Todd, second by Crystal to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.